Python programmer in a work environment. Thank you very much.
Yes. Yes, so this talk is titled, How Did You Do That? Or How a Non-Developer Snuck Python into a Large Organization. A little bit about me first. I'm an economist, got a master's in finance and econ. So no formal training as a developer, like at all. Hobby developer. Still remember the date that I got my first internet connection. It's a big moment for me. Worked with developing websites and web apps for 7 years in PHP, but I mean, what can you do? So I kind of got to Django, or Django was my gateway drug into Python. And then I just kind of, well, stayed here, I guess. So my job, I'm what's called a business developer, which is a little bit confusing because basically the only thing we don't do is develop. You could call it a business analyst, a representative, a geek translator. I have to take the requirements from the business, make sure the developers understand it. Excel ninja / quick reference, apparently, and just general number crunching. All the stuff that the developers don't do. I like this title more, Python Smuggler. It's actually a pretty good sketch from Multiprocessing. You should go see it. So this talk, I have not timed it. So I don't know, maybe we'll finish in like 10 minutes. And then you're just going to have to ask a whole lot of questions, okay? There'll be no code or no Python. There's going to be a little bit of code. And basically, it's about this. We had a keynote on this on the first day. I didn't see it. I was a little bit jet lagged or just tired. But I hear it was pretty good. Except I met a guy at the pie beer, and he said this instead. If you do it right, and I don't. What? No. So if you're out there, and hit me up and I'll give the correct attributions for this. Basically what I'm saying is if you do it right, you won't have to ask for forgiveness. Also a disclaimer. If you follow my advice and then get booted out, please don't come crying to me. Yeah, so I work in the financial sector. I work in a large bank. And banking IT is kind of a different beast than what most people are used to. You heard maybe you heard Spotify guys talking about their anti-hipster stack. Well, we take it a little bit further. This is a mainframe. And this is where pretty much all of the bank's systems are running. And it's this huge beast. And we have billions and billions of transactions going through this thing. And yes, they actually still exist. And they have this weird model where you rent it from IBM and you pay for how much CPU time you're using. It's kind of weird, but, well, that's how it is. That's how it's been for 40 years, so we're sticking with that. I heard someone mention this, with limiting the lines to a maximum of 79 characters, mentioning they didn't know where it came from. It has a small explanation at the bottom or right below this, where it says it's with some devices that can't handle longer, wider lines. And I know where it comes from. It comes from these bad boys. This is a IBM product to connect up to a Kix shell on the mainframe. This is basically what an entire banking system, or at least our banking system, was built in for the last 30 years. And you got 80 characters wide, 35 rows, and that's it. And these were also used as user interfaces for basically for everyone who was sitting in a branch and doing some stuff, just taking deposits and making new loans and whatever you do in a bank. And it's all keyboard driven. I mean, you can place your cursor with your mouse, but that's about as far as it goes. Of course, this is an emulator because you can't get those little terminals anymore. Yeah, well, that's true. So, I've been hearing a lot about legacy Python code. And if you say that you have 3-year-old, or basically if you say that you have legacy Python code, then you're lying. Then you are lying. I would actually go so far as to say if you haven't worked on code that's older than you are, you do not have legacy code. So, on the mainframe, you program in this. This is COBOL. Notice one of the nice features that basically every kind of addition and moving stuff into variables takes at least 2 lines. And this is actually pretty compact compared to what I usually look at. Basically add this variable to this variable and put it into this data structure. It can take 3 lines. And imagine, like, look at these little things. We love these. They are not considered harmful here. Then the other part is not because it stands for Programming Language 1, not because it's the best programming languages, but because it was one of the first. I'm sorry, but I couldn't find a syntax highlighter for this. What? Sorry? No, they do not. And they don't handle COBOL either. Someone should get on that. Yeah, it's a little more dynamic. No, it's cool. It's a little more dynamic. Not as verbose, but it's a weird language because all these keywords you see, they are not, I mean, they're not reserved. So you can have an if statement that says if, then, else, and it will be completely, legal. Of course, no one does that, except for when they do. So, and we have, I don't know how much code we have on this. Millions and millions. It's probably somewhere up there. Imagine a couple thousand people working on stuff for 30 years, and kind of what comes out. Some of the other goodies we're doing, we have a DB2 server, because when you have a mainframe, that's kind of what you do. Then we run some of the front-end stuff in SQL Server, C#, .NET with our own framework on top, because, well, just us, I guess. We run some SAS for analytics, some Java. People are, when they start a new project, sometimes they'll choose something other than our own custom framework. Then we have this is more on the business side of it, or what I have to deal with, Lotus Notes, which is an Eclipse-based email client. Think about that for a second, let that sink in. We're still running Windows XP. There's a migration project which has been going on for, I think, a year now, of moving us to Windows 7, just to make sure that we're always at least one version behind. And we're running IE7, and we migrated from IE6 about 1 year ago. So that little spec on your Google Analytics that says IE6, Yeah, until recently, that might have been some of us. And the cool thing about getting the new IE7 is that they disabled tabs, so that's awesome. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I kind of smuggled Python into this environment. So I got there, and being a business analyst and so on, I'm not in charge of any development and stuff, but I need to test some. We're working on a system to handle loans. Got, I don't know how many, 600,000 loans that we need to manage and send letters and invoices and bookkeepings and all the stuff that happens during a loan's lifetime, handle changes to it, handle changes in payment, changes in like lump sum payments, whatever you can imagine could happen to a loan. And basically, once we do this, we have to test everything. Cash flows. Imagine a 15-year loan, payments each month, 3 rows in a DB table for payment, five versions of the loan, maybe a couple of historic versions, times 600,000. That's the kind of data we're dealing with. And bookkeepings, got to test the interest calculation. A lot of funny stuff about rounding errors and stuff in there. And a lot of risk reporting. And did I mention that we have basically no automatic testing? Nothing. I mean, we can do some unit tests, but I mean, the code is not testable at all. Like, everything calls everything. It's a huge mess. So basically what we can do is we can make these events, and then we can look at the data afterwards and try and figure out what went wrong. So if you are to do this manually, step 1 is get your hands on some data. And of course, we have it pretty normalized. Yeah. We have this 15 different tables we need to get data from. So to do this, you need to do about 20 SQL queries. And you're thinking, that sounds weird. But when you're dealing with a table where if you do a count from that table, it times out, then you need to be very, very aware of whether or not you are hitting the right indexes. And, well, it's 20 queries. That was about the minimum amount we could get to and still get all the data we needed. And there is no chance of influencing this, like how this indexing works, because this is production code, and that's just how it is. Here's an example. Yeah, and that's not a regular user CPU limit. This is the next highest CPU limit you can get before you're a DBA. So this is what happens, and this is for the previous slide. Basically what you would have to do is you would have to use this weird web interface to run an SQL, save it to Excel, run another SQL, save it to Excel. You can kind of do it a little bit in parallel, but you need to do it 20 times per loan. So this gets a little bit, let's say, boring. I think that's a good word. And this, if you were just looking at one loan, that's okay, but you're looking at the same loan over and over again after and before events. And I think during the last kind of testing crunch, which lasted a couple of months, we were looking at least a couple thousand loans. So you can imagine this taking some time. You need to format that data so that it's nice to look at and do some stuff so that you can kind of get it into a format that will kind of bring out the errors in it. So you use these to make about 10 pivot tables with some fields in them. And I don't know if you ever used this, pivot tables. Who used it? Yeah? You know, point and click, drag, just keep dragging, and it takes forever. Exactly. The lightning talk man knows what I'm talking about. Then you have to test it. This is actually the only part that our managers care about. This is the part that adds business value. All the other stuff was just grunt work. So the downside to this process is it's really slow. And it's like mind-numbingly boring. You're just doing stuff that a monkey could do. Not even a well-trained monkey, just any monkey. And it's really slow. And you get out these data, it's inconsistent. There's all these naming differences. Maybe you forgot a query. Maybe you've sorted stuff weirdly. I don't know. It's inconsistent, and it's, again, ridiculously slow. And there's lots of room for error. And did I mention it was slow? Like, it could probably take at least an hour to get all this data out alone. So, what does a lazy Python programmer do? Well, automate it. So, there's a couple of problems with that when you're working in the kind of environment that I just outlined for you. Well, problem number one, no administrator rights on your work PC. It's a good one. It's pretty easy. Get portable Python. Make sure your screen is pointing away from your manager while you're doing this. It's a fairly recent, I think it's Python 2.7.3, and it includes PyWin and PyGTK and PyQt, so it's a pretty good distribution to start from. Second problem, DB2. That's not one of the regular ones. I haven't seen a lot of people talking about running their stuff on DB2. Well, it turns out there is. I was just as surprised as everybody else about this. I think actually IBM made it themselves, and they have this DBI compliant layer on top of it, and it's actually pretty good. They also have an SQL Alchemy extension for it, but an SQL Alchemy backend, but it's only version 0.4, which was a while ago. Actually, they also have a Django backend, if anyone of you wants to. So, getting the data into Excel. And we want it into the new Excel because their pivot tables are nicer, and you don't get all these little pop-up boxes asking you about formatting. And there's this great project called OpenPyXL, which is a port of PHP Excel, except it has a good API. So that's pretty much the only difference. Still has a little bit of problems with some encoding, or it may just be the data we have in our database, I don't know. And as I'm saying here, just forget about doing the PyWin bridge to VBA stuff. It's slow, and it opens Excel and moves stuff around, and you're basically coding VBA in Python. And it's, even though they're a pretty good match for each other with name parameters and such, it's just don't do it. And make the pivot table. So this is, it's not as bad as you actually think. It's a little bit worse. It's not pleasant, but gotta do what you gotta do to make stuff work, right? And it is the best tool for this particular job. So, well, input. We're on Windows XP, so the terminal is terrible. There's no copy paste. There's no like piping stuff around. It just gets weird. And also, we want to run this multiple times using the same input, and ideally save a little bit of time when entering this input. So we don't want to like punch in, let's say, 20 10-digit numbers. Also, if someone else who's not a programmer should use it, it should be fairly simple. So just make a text file, optional file name, and the account number, and it'll just output it. You can send these text files around. You can even generate them with Excel if you're trying to do that. And then you probably need to distribute this to get the really good benefits from this. You need to get other people using it. So we need to distribute this. And the best way would be if we could distribute something that doesn't take up a whole lot of space, and that doesn't say Python all over the place. So get Py2x and put in a dist folder, include a bat file that launches it, and distribute a zip file. It'll take up a couple of megabytes. You can send it over email. And this is basically just a service to non-technical co-workers. I mean, even extracting a zip file for someone who's not very technical can be a bit of a challenge, getting it extracted in the right way and not just opening stuff directly from them. So this and everything will be better. That's all the problems. Now it's time to actually do some work. So start with the low-hanging fruit. The new workflow, like this. Insert the account you want in a text file, double-click a bat file, look at this little Python prompt, and it has a little progress bar, and then at the end you get 20 Excel files. So what happens inside of it? Basically, instead of doing one SQL per loan per table, we do some, say, nasty rewriting of the SQL based on the account numbers to hit the indexes in the right spot, and then do one query per table. So we, instead of doing, say, like 200 queries, we end up doing 20. Basically, the queries are hugely expensive. So we want to run as few as possible, and we want to hit the indexes. If you don't hit the indexes on some of our tables, you will get results out, but it'll take you 10 minutes. If you hit the index, it'll take you 1 second. So that's the order we're talking about. And then run the queries in parallel, because there's a lot of waiting around. They just start the query, and then it might take a minute before it comes back. So run it in parallel. I would have liked to use multiprocessing, but Py2x and the whole hack with starting a new process and the main file has to be importable and all that stuff, it didn't go that well. And then schedule the expensive queries first and let stuff finish. Basically, it's just whatever you do to optimize, and this is kind of where I stopped because then it was fast enough. So now it takes 2 minutes to get 20 loans out, where before it would take an hour to get 1 loan out. And then you open up the Excel files, and I've written a bunch of macros. You just take a little file, and it does go tables, add some metadata to make it a little nicer to test, do some formatting, color some lines, add 1,000 separator here and there. And I think it's like a couple hundred lines of code, and you can actually structure it pretty well, and it's just something that needs to be done. So time per test case went from 2 hours to 45 minutes. And this is 45 minutes of effective time. Like, this is the business value time. This is, sometimes you can finish it in 12 minutes, 10 minutes, if you can see that the error you were looking for is still there. If you do like a clean slate test, it'll probably take you somewhere between 30 and 45 minutes, depending on whether or not there's any errors in it. So basically, we tripled our efficiency. Also, there's no data errors anymore, because, I mean, we do the same thing all the time. We do it right. We've tested that or checked that. So all the Excel files look the same. And this also has the effect that when I make a bug report, I can send along, I can make all my notes inside an Excel file and color and make lines and make a nice little explanation, and then send it to a developer, and he will open it up and know what he's looking at because he's seen a lot of them before. And when we need to bring new people in on this, it's a lot flatter learning curve, because they will only have to do our testing. So this is kind of the result if you're actually interested. this is the breakdown for managers. So basically, I used this stuff that I wasn't really allowed to, and I increased our efficiency by 300%. That. And don't tell them that I could have done this in Java, C#, or even in Visual Basic. I mean, that would be suicide, but you could. I've seen people do that. Basically, it would have just taken me a lot longer to write it. I think the first version of this was an afternoon. I was working off-site, so no one looking at my screen. And I just decided that I was fed up with it and did it. And I think by now, like 1 year after, I've probably spent 25 hours tops refining and keeping it up to date. As some other examples, some conversion tools cut our need for people on shifts from from 2 to 3 to 1 person on the expensive pay, like Saturday night pay. Some reporting checkers. Basically, we get to find the errors in our reporting before our users do. All DSL for checking that we route our payments into the right places. Basically, this would make everything grind to a halt and make us have to do a lot of stuff before continuing, and a lot of manual corrections. It take a lot of time, so why not check it automatically? And then my boss came and asked me to do a little app for listing some approvals that you need to get. Our stakeholders were interested in seeing how many approvals were generated a day. So we made a little app with a little calendar and a login form, and they could just choose the date and get Excel out. So actually my project manager came to me and asked me for this to send directly to our stakeholders. So some takeaways. Why did this work? Well, first thing is you want to fail early and fail silent. You don't want to go out there. You don't want to go out there and tell everybody that, hey, I'm going to revolutionize what we're doing here. It doesn't work that way. Do it for yourself first. And don't try to solve someone else's problem. Make sure you know what you're doing, like know your own problem. Because people are kind of finicky about their work. You don't want to come in and tell someone who's been doing something for 3, 4, 5 years that you can do it better and faster and cheaper and with less errors. That'll just make them mad and annoyed. So don't do that. Do it for yourself. This also gives you the option of just bailing out, just deleting everything from the hard drive and saying, okay, can't be done, without anyone expecting something from you. This you can choose to do or not. Do it on your own time. Basically, take an hour here, an hour there, maybe some night work, whatever, and try this out. Like, it doesn't take a lot if you keep it simple, and it also has the nice little side effect that if it doesn't work out, it won't have cost the company money, which is going to be important if your boss gets on your back about this. And I know it sucks to work for free, but just nut up and do it if you want to do this. And go for the low-hanging fruit first. I mean, do something easy, something where there's a lot of gain to be had, a lot of value to extract. Don't overreach. Don't try and fix everything in first go. Just start small. Go for the low-hanging fruit. Small utilities, stuff you only use once in a while, some little tooling stuff are good places to start. You know, stuff that's not part of the business core. You don't want to come out there and try and rewrite the production in this over a weekend on your own time. That's not going to work. Do something that's reachable. And then, because we're dealing with managers here, measure the value. This can be how much time you save how much time you've used, how many errors you're saving. So if you follow the first 3 suggestions, then you'll have a pretty good solution that saves you some time, makes your life easier. And basically, it will have cost the company nothing. If you did it on your own time, the expense to the company, there is none. And this is just the example from the first utility I was talking about. Saves us 2 hours a day. Well, great. There's 20 working days in a month. At 2 hours a day, that's 40 hours a month. And this accumulates. So this is 40 hours every month that we are working with this. And this is one of the only things I've seen at this conference that actually has linear scaling. I mean, you get 2 people to do it, it's 80 hours. You get 3 people, it's 120 hours. You get 4 people, 160 hours. That's a man month. You've just given your project manager another full-time employee. Suggestion number 5, get grass level support. To get these nice scaling effects, you have to make sure that your colleagues like what you're doing. And it's a lot harder for a manager to go up and say, hey, you 5 people, stop doing that thing really efficiently because we don't like what you're doing. Than just going up and telling one person that, why are you messing around with Python or whatever. So if you get support from your colleagues, it will be a lot harder to punish you over it. Then be patient. Don't run to the manager telling you solved everything. Just let it grow, nice and easy. And if you get asked questions, just be honest. Just say, I use Python. I did it this and this way because that was the way I could solve it. You don't want to be lying. You don't want to be trying to cheat them or anything. Just be honest. And of course, if they decide that they're really, really against it, then it's time to beg for forgiveness. So do that, or I don't know, maybe find someone who will appreciate what you're doing. But I mean, if you do this right, you're not going to have to beg for forgiveness. It's just going to be basically saying, well, your manager's going to say, well, this is cool. What else can you do if you got a good manager and not too strict about it? Because basically what this is about is, and what all of it is about, is making your manager look good. Your manager wants results. And if you're in a big corporation, your manager is probably also a little bit fed up with some of the IT rules and regulations. So make sure you don't try and backstab them or do anything like that. Just be honest about it. Then you can be like this guy. That's what I had to say.
Thank you very much. Are there questions?
Great talk. Thank you very much. I've got an ethical question. You managed to cut down from 2 hours to 44 minutes, if I remember correctly. How do you think about not telling everyone and doing the job? Usually 2 hours, so 8-hour workday, you are supposed to have 4 loans, whatever, evaluated per day. You can do it half a day and spend the afternoon improving your knowledge, surfing Reddit.
I think it comes back to the being honest part. To get to a level, I mean, you need to trust your manager needs to trust you. So being honest about it has led to, you see the last example where I was actually asked to do some of these things. Regularly happens, so now it's a part of what I do. And that's kind of where I want to go, you know. I want to be writing some Python. And that wouldn't happen if I was just automating my own stuff and, yeah.
Anyone else?
Okay, so you build a tool, your colleagues start using it, then 2 weeks later they have already forgotten how to do the old way, then it breaks, now you have to support a system that's not supposed to be there.
Yeah.
How's that going to happen?
That's basically what I'm saying. Don't overreach. Make it simple. Make it easy. Of course, you're going to have to be there and support it because it's kind of your thing.
So how are you here if you have to be there in case it breaks? You're the Python guy in the whole bank, so...
Yeah, well, basically, we have a lot of programmers. We have a lot of new programmers coming out. If I'm not there anymore, someone else would be able to take over because now it's an accepted thing. But basically, write small utilities that are run on demand. Again, don't overreach, so you get these little things that they could choose to use or not. And I mean, people are not stupid. They're not going to forget how they did it last week. Or I mean, maybe someone will come in who's never seen the old way, and that could be a problem. I have not experienced that yet.
So first, I just want to correct you. You can copy and paste in the Windows command line thing. It's just very inconvenient.
It is very convenient with the right click and yeah.
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 And second, you never did answer the question, so did you get fired, or did you get promoted, or do you now have a job doing this full time?
I did not get fired. I mean, my manager liked it, and I get some time every now and then to do these sorts of things, and it's accepted now. So, yeah, Neil?
Quick question, the Excel library, how well does it actually work, or what features can you export directly? You can't build the pivot tables in Python. That's why you have to use the Visual Basic, right?
Yeah, you're talking about the PyOpenExcel or OpenPyExcel. Like if it supports pivot tables, it doesn't. I use it strictly for getting stuff into Excel. You could use it for some of the coloring and stuff as well, but again, going back to what you were talking about, I chose to keep the tool simple and put a lot of the logic in the VBA tool because more people would be familiar with how to fix that.
Yeah. Anyone else? All right. Thank you very much.